Welcome to the virtual opening reception for our new exhibition. I'm Janice Cotter, the gallery manager at Chroma Arts. Before we start this evening, I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude for, pardon me, sorry. I'd like to express my gratitude to the Chroma Arts Board of Directors, as well as say how thankful we are for funding from the Province of British Columbia and the Government of Canada and the City of Port Moody. At the start of the pandemic, the gallery at Chroma Arts pivoted to digital exhibitions, as well as virtual receptions and artist talks. The artwork is installed in the gallery again. Oh, it says we're having trouble playing this. Sorry, I'm not sure. I think it just did a funny thing. Okay, no, I think we're good. Sorry, it said, I could see it said there was a problem. So I'm just going to continue and hope that it isn't, it looks like it's still going. So apologies for the technical glitch on the Facebook feed. The artwork is installed in the gallery again, but we continue to do hybrid exhibitions so that you can enjoy the artwork by visiting the gallery in person or in the comfort of your home with a virtual visit to the exhibition page on Chroma Arts website. On that page, you'll find a digital gallery that you can click on and scroll through to see artwork photos, artwork details, and information about the artists. You can also support our artists by letting people know about their exhibition or by purchasing artwork over the phone or in person. Thank you for joining us tonight for a mysterious attraction, a new take on gravitational art. The artists for tonight's exhibition are joining us. Edzy, Pierre Leichner, and Bill Westwell. Edzy, do you want to raise your hand so they know, everybody knows who you are? Okay, and Pierre, do you want to raise your hand? And Bill, you can raise your hand. Okay, so earlier this week, Caitlin Hill, our communications, or pardon me, our marketing coordinator, filmed all of the artists walking through the gallery and each of them talking about their artwork. And she's edited it into a lovely video that we will play this evening. And then we will have the artists here to answer your questions afterwards. So you can post your questions in Facebook and we will ask the artists. It lasts about 35 minutes, and then we'll have time to still talk to the artists afterwards. I want to say many thanks to Caitlin for helping with this video. In the past year, we have learned a lot of new techniques and tried to find ways to continue to share art with people online so that they don't feel like they're missing the things that we used to do all in person. So this is our opening reception for this evening. I will start the video now. I'm going to share the screen and play the video. Give me a second here. Okay, here we go. Enjoy. And we'll see you afterwards for some chats with the artists.
Hi, I'm Bill Westwell. This is my abstract collection I'm getting to introduce along with a couple other artists here. So,
hi, I'm Pierre Leichner, and I am one of the artists on this wonderful show, A Mysterious Attraction, a new spin on gravitational art.
I'm Edzy. I'm here at Chroma Art Center with Pierre Leichner and Bill Westwood, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself, about my artwork before we take a virtual tour of the center.
When I came to meet up with Pierre and Edzy, I was actually working at Opus Art Supplies in North Van, and I was helping them frame up for some of the shows. So they wound up talking to me and discovering that I was into experimental art and I was using fundamental forces to actually generate detail and flow and texture out of my work. So we saw a correlation between ourselves as being mad scientists, about engaging more than just a paintbrush and trying to generate something new, and always into the mode of discovery. So here we are playing with something new.
I describe myself as an interdisciplinary artist with a socially engaged practice and also a personal practice that brings science and art together. In my previous career, I was on the science balance of the equation, and for years worked in research and so on. And then I switched career and retrained as an artist and full-time artist.
In 1986, I thought I was getting more focused with fine art because I had always had the dream to become an artist. And so I started to develop something from Patterson Ewan's work. He was always a representational artist. And essentially, I saw that nobody else had done non-objective rupturing of the surface before they painted. I call it non-objective gouge painting. So I started to explore that. Shortly after that, in 1987, I found myself reading Jack Derrida's book, The Truth in Painting, which really inspired me. I thought, maybe I'm a deconstructivist. So I had to learn a little bit more, and it led me to university to get a BFA honors degree by 1992. And I've been working at this non-objective gouge painting for quite some time now. And this is just a part of the experimentation that I go through with trying to describe this particular expression.
I've always been kind of interested in this kind of interface between science and art, because to me they're really two sides of the same coin, if you want. And what they share is this pursuit that we have in trying to understand our own existence and the world around us. So I was fortunate enough, a few years now, to meet Ed Zed, and Bill Westwell, who share this interest in this interface between science and art.
So this body of work stems from 2015, when two of these black holes came together, and LIGO, that's the laser interferometer gravitational wave observatory. I better think that through. Basically recorded it as a chirp, and somehow I think both Pierre and myself were inspired by that, and we thought that we could go and include that in our subject matter, in our artwork. So this is the basis of our show here today at POMO.
Wormhole is one of the pieces that this is about a third of my way into working with abstract. And when I generated this one, it was the first time I started playing around with really high contrast with a dark underlay first. So being able to get these high contrast colors and show a lot of the topography through it, this immediately went on my wall, and it lived on my wall for about 1.5 years, and I couldn't stop looking at it. So I knew this had to go into a show, so I was quite excited. I've scanned it quite a few times as well too, and the detail I find in some of these areas, the rainbow lacing, it breaks my brain. I hope you can see this in person because cameras don't pick it up right. So some of my smaller pieces at the top here is Chasm. This is one of my earlier works, and it was one of the first pieces that made me realize I need to share it with the public because the detail and the depth and the contrast could not be captured by digital means. So it can only be seen in person to really show what I found in it. So seeing this piece come to life in front of me for the first time is what kicked me into the world of not just making, but wanting to be able to share the art and seeing the significance and be able to pass out this detail to everyone else that I'm noticing. The techniques I'm using for Chasm on this one involve using a ring pour, and a ring pour involves taking all the paint that's carefully mixed and prepared and stacking them inside a cup, kind of like an expensive shot you would buy at a bar where there's multiple layers and colors. When I pour those down, it creates topography lines, and when I use multiple contrasts, different colors in my pigments, I'm able to get some amazing detail that with a brush, it would make me insane to be able to draw that stuff. So I'm pleased that I can find a natural process that generates these elements for me. When I look into this one, I get a sense of a really deep Marianas Trench. There's such depth and so much detail hiding inside those depths as well too. The subtleties, I'm very pleased. I hope you can get your eyes on this one. The next two down here are both some of my newer works. They were both done during the pandemic last year. I think I did them in October. This is part of my process, is where when I mix my paints for my projects, I do a lot of test strips. I try multiple things. I check to see the viscosities of my mediums, if they're going to flow right and generate the right materials for me. And a lot of the time, I'll test on a smaller piece to see if it works. And sometimes those turn out just as I want them to, and I still keep them. I'll still work on a bigger piece later on too, but this is always that matter of, can I walk my way into something really large without really committing myself and wasting a lot of paint, which can happen.
So here we have actually two of my last pieces, actually, series that I've started a couple of years ago. And as you can notice right away, they are on doors. Now you may say, why use doors? These are reclaimed old doors out of buildings that were abandoned and about to be destructed. Well, the idea came originally from actually a cosmologist who said at some point, a scientist said, that the discovery of gravitational waves might open the door to our understanding of our universe. So, well, I had these doors kicking around as abandoned, and I said, well, maybe that might be interesting. So I started to work with doors, and as you'll see for the rest of the show, they do occur as a theme. Now, essentially, the colors here are a bit unusual because they do reflect the progression and having more fun with colors and bringing different interest to it. But the theme is essentially the same with the doors, which is a representation of a black hole somewhere, as well as these waves, or these gravitational kind of waves coming out of it. In these pieces in particular, you can also see some other component, which is fragmentation. If you look into the red resin, you can see pieces as if the black or something had been broken apart, and they're embedded into this as they're being pushed out from the black hole, perhaps, or rather being brought into it. So it has these multi-layers of paint, resin, and you'll see again throughout the doors and some of the work, the gravity working in the paint itself by taking some paint lower down, the heavier paint sinking, and the lighter paint coming to the surface.
So here's my piece, Ringing Universe, 2018 piece. It started with a tabletop. And clearly a tabletop has a center to it. But this has actually got three separate centers. One is here, one is here, and this one overall is just a little bit away from the center. So there's three different spots that I spun this, okay? But it's also got two elements from a CNC router. This is the first one. This was all hand painted. You can actually see the grain of the wood that I'm dealing with. This one is the CNC router, but it's also covered with hydrocal, sanded down. You can see the grooves in the actual work, but it's in the painting that becomes a little bit different. But this one was not actually spun. This was hand delivered and lit to set. The other portion here was spun, and it was alla prima as well. Essentially, Ringing Universe has to do with the idea that the entire universe is in motion. That even down to the smallest thing, down to the quantum level, you still have motion, even though you can't see it moving. So Ringing Universe is the entire universe is moving. And that's the subject matter for this one. So this is motorized void and blue, and I have gouged it with a CNC router into concentric lines so that I can refer back to Patterson-Ewan, one of my favorite artists who used gouging in his artwork first. And then I went over the entire thing with hydrocal. Hydrocal being a very hard plaster. so as to only leave a trace. Once I sand it down, it only leaves a trace of the concentric circles. Thereafter, I hand painted it. So it's about presence and absence. It's about trace over substance. So with this piece, it also has a piercing after Lucio Fontana, the very first person that used piercing in his paintings. So I'm trying to refer to a lot of different movements as I go through my artwork, because I'm trying to actually make an expression out of the gouging in all my artwork. So the piercing enables me to put a motor in the back of this, and it spins, which makes it a kinetic painting. So the dialogue should come down to what the piercing does, other than being an aesthetic like Lucio Fontana would do. I use it as a means to go ahead and create another effect, basically, but you don't even see the piercing. So it comes down to another thing, where's the void? The void could be the piercing, as Lucio Fontana would have preferred, or it could be in the mirror itself, which gives you a different dimension in the artwork.
So this is Slidescape, and this is the biggest canvas I've ever worked on. This is the result of all the other work I've done here. Everything I built is another progression to the next piece. Everything I learn, I move on and I keep as I move on and create new work. This guy, it took everything to make it happen. Because a canvas this large can trampoline as soon as you put material onto it, it means you can get a much thicker puddle of paint, which can cause cracking and drying issues and can destroy the actual material on the top layer, essentially ruin the entire piece. So this took an entire support system I had to build behind it. I did an entire underlay, a sanding system with a highly reflective substrate. All the paints that I had to mix up on this. If you're able to walk past some of these areas, you'll see that there's a holographic quality, and I'm using something called a micropigment flake, which is only reflecting back a certain frequency of light. As I'm working with those in multiple layers, they're creating small ring pockets. So as you look at this painting from either side, there's a slight holographic effect as the photons bounce through at different angles, at different points. So this is one of the ones I knew had to be seen in person. My intention when I made this piece was that I work on making my own kids' books. Most of them are science fiction based, and I wanted a big gas giant Jupiter-style planet. So I was trying to make some really stormy equator-style systems with some more polar elements in the top and the bottom that I could use inside my books when I stretch these things into planetary forms. So what we're looking at here is meeting of my needs for trying to create my own original material for my kids' books, but also seeing how far I can really go with a canvas in pushing every single technique I've learned throughout everything I've gathered through this show. Slidescape is one of my best pieces I've come across. I'm absolutely a fan of every part I look at. Anytime I scan this or anytime I use my camera on it, I can get into a tiny little section that becomes a whole new painting to me. It's a world into itself. I hope you can enjoy it in person.
This piece is Golden Ripples in Spacetime, 2018, and it was done with a CNC router with Bridget Riley and Victor Visaroli in mind. They were the pop artists of their time, and I thought that putting in this double concentric circle pattern over each other would give me a moire effect. The painting itself has been done with spray paint, and it's actually gold on gold. The first part of it is actually spun and then painted with the spray bomb, and then it's slowed down slightly so that I can go ahead and do another pass with another gold color, and it gives me another pattern. I don't know whether you can see it from here, but I can see it. It gives it sort of an eye in the middle.
So continuing on this theme of doors, these are some of the earlier doors that I started to work on. This is one of the first ones. As you can see, there's a pattern of using spinning as a way of getting the force to kind of work on a paint, as well as within the paint itself. There is the element of different colors and different coming to the surface and others sinking, while at the same time you see gold and silver, which is a theme in many of my earlier doors, because it is thought that when black holes coalesce and they have these big explosions, so to speak, they create the gravitational waves in this time space fabric we live in. Silver, gold, elements, basically, I created them. And so that's where you see these colors coming through. So in this one, a bit later, you see two holes actually, two black holes possibly coming together as another event that's happening. And again, these are reclaimed doors that were abandoned and were about to be discarded. And in the other one there, you again, in here I'm starting to use not only paint, but also resin that has these colors in it. So as an artist, one always likes to experiment, which is again that kind of bridge between science and art, observation and experimentation. And these doors are, I think, very important to me, but I start to think, okay, not everybody's going to be interested in or have the space to put a door on their wall. Essentially, these are paintings, fairly large paintings, two-dimensional. So I start to experiment with different surfaces, and maybe smaller surfaces that still reflect the theme. And so here I have these 8 by 8 boxes, wooden boxes that again work on the same theme. You have black holes, you have gravitational waves emerging out of the black hole, and I also start to work on concave and convex surfaces, such as these bowls.
Spinners is human-powered fluid painting, spun to go and do it, and it's got a convex mirror on it as well. Kind of the void that I'm trying to, talk about every once in a while. And do one more. There we go. Spiral Explosion is a 2020 piece that was CNC routed to begin with, filled in with hydrocal, sanded down, and then remodified using a hand-operated die grinder to give you that roughness that I imagined that a supernova would have. It wouldn't be uniform. So every supernovas have a different fingerprint. They don't look the same, probably because of size or there's chemistry involved or whatever. So this is just an interpretation of what I would expect the supernova to be.
So to continue in the spirit of experimentation, I started to work, as I said earlier, with concave and convex surfaces. And this is a series of bowls, essentially, that are on the same theme. But I added a little extra dimension to it by putting on these widgets. They kind of spin and on momentum, and kind of give an imaginary kind of idea of what it would be like if you were on a spaceship coming in towards a black hole, for example. That's one of the things I might think about. In this display here, we also have a TV satellite dish. So this is getting waves from the cosmos, and I've transformed it a bit, obviously with the concept of the black hole, getting waves from it. And I introduced an old fishing reel that you can actually spin with the idea of us fishing out there for these waves. Well, and then with the doors as well, to put another spin on it, I created this door that is two-sided now, so you can walk around in it. And I kind of put it in a way of suspended equilibrium, where it's kind of gravity's pulling on it. It's not going to move, but we see the effect of potential gravity moving the door down.
Magnetic Black Hole was one of my earliest pieces, actually. Once I started to really get serious as an artist. It's fully concrete, white concrete actually. And so I have now buried a speaker magnet into a slurry of white concrete, dead center into a square block of this slurry, and I hand formed it into the shape. Pierced the hole through it, much in the same way as Henry Moore would have done with his white concrete. I think this was the experiment. How much work did Henry Moore do with his artwork? And essentially, it is now a painting. If you look through the center portion, you won't see a bottom to it. that is actually the black painting involved here. The magnet holds steel wool, which gives you the radial lines, let's say, of the magnetism, which also refers to a black hole and the attraction. Actually, it's got a push and a pull with the magnetism. It's not just gravity. But this is one of the earliest pieces that I can think of with astronomy involved.
Welcome to Chroma Wave. This is my personal favorite. I consider this my flagship piece. This took a lot of planning, this took a lot of preparation, this took about 5 days of mixing and decanting and evaporating paint to get to the right qualities. This took about 3 canvases to test before I could actually work on this one. It also took me building a styrofoam backing to fill in the back of the frame so it wouldn't actually dip out and get a bit of a trampoline from too much fluid, because the weight of this much paint sitting on a piece of fabric can really distend and crack as it dries. So this took a lot of preparation, this took a lot of all of my skills I'd gathered from other pieces, my smaller ones. And when this came together, I've never been so pleased. One thing that I'm really pleased with what happened here is my Discord palette. So working on complementary colors of slightly shifted hue. So working with the violets and the golds, you get a perception of other colors by association. The flow, the feel in this one, it's inspired me to go really far with what I can do with this painting. So I've spent a lot of time learning how to digitally capture this, how to scan it, and how to put it onto scarves and t-shirts and leggings and use it in my books. Essentially, this is the turkey that I get to slice up and use in multiple ways because I keep finding something new inside it. This is another piece that I knew had to be seen in person because of the detail. The camera does great, but the eyes, that's the only way to work with it. And to walk across past it too, because once again, there's depth around these different angles of metallic pigments that you can really get a different sense of as you move through it. I love this one. I hope you can see it in person.
So, gravitational waves led to the origins of gold in the universe, 2018. And this again was on a CNC router. It's got the hydrocal that I put into the gouges and sanded it down and painted with an alla prima spinning the entire work. This piece really refers to the very first time that they discovered that all the heavy elements were involved with 2 neutron stars that came together in 2017. Now, Pierre and myself had known each other for some time before this, but these were catalytic moments that brought us together to go ahead and make these pieces. And essentially, the piece refers also to Eugene Kira, who originally used a vertical spinning type of artwork where he spun his canvases, and I think that was 1960. So, just as a historical reference, this is not a new thing, but we're working on a totally different basis now, and ours is mostly horizontal.
So, dual purple, once again, 12 by 36 format. That sort of midpoint in my abstract career was checking to see about working on larger canvases without committing too far. This gave me a chance to really get some nice flow and a bit of speed with the paint working as I was and letting it slide around. This one was done with flip cup. This is where I would have pre-layered all my pre-mixed paints into a very expensive shot glass looking style. And the thing is put down upside down, which allows the paint to descend and rain down through itself. So the weights of the pigments displace within their own little pocket of the cup and create their own mixing. This is where I can get these wonderful sort of swirl effects and these nice little sweeps. We can see the generate of the blue there is from me actually generating motion. So this was a bit of a momentum grab of the paint as it slid across. You get to capture some of these natural elements, and this one's got a lot of detail hiding inside of it. Quite like it. It's an ethereal cloud that just sort of works. Down below, we have got ourselves a sky swipe. This is another one of my nebula series, where I was playing with sort of subtle hues, working around my own tones of blue, checking to see what I can get for a really light, lacy nebula effect. Nothing super hard contrast. I just wanted to have a nice, subtle, soft shift that I could use as a backdrop as a nice sky. And that's what I got from it. Over to this side, this is veiled lace. Veiled lace is one of my favorite pieces I've ever made. This is one I've planned for a long time. In fact, I painted this one on my 42nd birthday, so this meant a lot to me. What I spent a lot of time with this canvas on was working on the prep first, so preparing my substrate. So it actually has multiple layers of stabilizing at the base that are actually reflective and also highly neon. I've painted off the edges, but we used to be able to see great bands of neon paint coming around the edges that I then put different layers on top to preserve before I did my next layering. The layering on this one, it works with what's called interference paint. And interference paint has got microflake in it that creates the reflection of only a certain spectrum of light. So there's an entire layer of just micro before we get to the next layers on top. So this is a multiple pour where I let this cure and dry, let it sit, and if it's looking right, I move into the next layer. Each layer was quite subtle and transparent. So we're looking at almost a hologram that's been stacked up. If you can look into these areas in person and walk past it, you can actually see that effect quite clearly. This is one of my favorite pieces. I absolutely love it.
So this is Rotational Disk 2020. And again, it's an alla prima spin painting with a grooved feature that leaves a grid, basically. A little bit different than all the other pieces. The center portion is hand painted with a highly pigmented black so that it absorbs as much color as possible. This represents, I guess, I'd like to use the word referential, to a black hole with an accretion disk.
So dual pour was using two different styles of techniques. You'll see down here there's a much higher contrast banding versus more of the smoky effects. This is because I introduced alcohol into my stacked cup. So one of the layers had a bit of alcohol. I had to work quickly because the alcohol starts to affect the other paint around it. So this was a matter of, it's like being Indiana Jones in the temple and the boulder starts rolling. Once the paint gets down, you have to move. There is no waiting around for it because the materials are generating their own qualities over time and we have to get going with it. The contrast I got with this was from the Modernist palette. There's a lot of high contrast with the, both titanium and zinc paint inside there as well too. So there's different tones of white that affect. And the zinc is a much more transparent quality, allowing for some of the colors to start to pop through. I enjoy the contrast and flow on this one, and I've used this for quite a few planetary pieces in my kids' books.
So this is one of my earliest bowls, and very clearly there's the element of gold and colors that are associated with the things that get created out of collision of black holes. And for fun, I also started to take the spinning kind of component further by being able, people can spin actually the bowl itself. And within the bowl, there is also the widgets that can be spun. So we have this funny kind of this interaction between these two spinning objects that create a special effect and image, an imaginary event that might happen if you were close to a black hole.
Okay, so anyway, this is a black hole merger. It's a diptych. In other words, two pieces that come together to go on form one piece of artwork. There was a situation where the LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, happened to go and take a sound, a chirp from this particular happening. I believe it was September the 17th, 2015 that happened. And so I created this as a kind of a remembrance of that moment and trying to do something a little bit more novel again. This time we're exhibiting it horizontally, much in the same way that were created, in fact. The black holes represent two of these bodies coming together before they actually form a complete orb. And this is part of the show. This is another part of the piece. The happening is a little bit closer, where we've got more of a combination. The black is a very intense pigment, as black as I can get, so that there's a difference between the black color here and the black color here. Again, we've got the gold, and because light has a certain kind of a color, but in this particular case, I think black and gold go good together, so I'm using that a lot, and including the silver. As you can see, Pierre also does that himself. So, but we've got a difference in the way we use our expression to talk about the same kind of materials. So
these are two of my earlier doors, and again, you can see the similarity in terms of the colors, the gold and the silver, and reflecting possibly what may be happening as things fall into a black hole, or as well as here as two black holes coming together and in the process throwing out all these waves, gravitational waves. So here we have two types of doors actually, and they are actually painted on both sides, as one might expect, as you go through this black hole, if you want, what is on the other side, and we'll look at that shortly. There are also folding doors, and there the connection was to the idea of what people talk about totally mysteriously, and is about the concept of folding time and space together. And so this is kind of an imaginary way of showing this through a folding door. So this is the other side, as one might imagine what it would be like to look at the black hole from the other side, if there is another side, a dark side, or a different world, a different universe.
We have Dragonport. Dragonport was one of the pieces I was playing around with mixed transparency and high opacity paint, so allowing for light transmission through different layers versus hard blocking and creating contrast in different areas. I was trying to go for a hard gestural swipe on this one. This was very meant to be a big sweep of my film across the paint as it's breaking across itself. When I move quickly like that, it almost creates a pressure wave that if I'm using a clear piece of film, I can see through it as it starts to break the paint. It allows me to know how much pressure and how fast to move. So it turns into almost its own instrument as I get to play around with this stuff. This one was further along in my explorations of the 12x36s, so I was getting much more comfortable with how big I could work with and what I could do. And I was quite pleased with how this one worked out. There's a lot of heavy silver paint in it that creates these pockets that dive down. So anytime there's a heavier pigment next to a lighter weight one, it'll actually displace it while it's still wet and dive down like a lava lamp. And that's what's creating a lot of these cellular pockets. And down here, root of it all, this is actually the first 12x36 I ever did. And this is one of my favorites ever pulled together. I didn't know how it was going to turn out because I was working with some quite bright paint. I didn't know how the light fastness is going to work out, but this one's been around for about 2 years now and it's held up really well. It looks the same as when I first shot it, so it seems like the pigments are holding together. This was the intention of trying to do a big cosmic tree, and it's called Root of It All for that exact reason.
Sometimes I decide to add another component into a piece, and in this one in particular I like it. It's kind of a fun piece where I have used little figurines, human form figurines, the types that architects may use in these little models. And what we have here is kind of a reflection of what it is like, it might be like if we were extruded or thrown out of a black hole, or on the other hand perhaps falling in is a possibility, as you see all these little figurines kind of falling in, while we can also spin the actual hole. So I definitely want to thank the Port Moody Art Center for providing this wonderful opportunity to get us three together and to showcase our work. It is ongoing work, as all three of us are continuing to work in this area, and based on scientific discoveries, and we shape our thoughts, and we are continuously experimenting, which is the fun and the beauty of this work.
Thank you for joining us for this virtual tour, and thank you to the Pomo Art Center for helping us to exhibit our artwork. That's Pierre Lechner and Bill Westwell. We hope that you will go and join us here at the exhibition to see it in person, and our pieces are for sale. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for viewing the art, whether you can do it in person, which it's a challenging time to come out and do that kind of stuff, but if you can, I really hope you can get your eyes on this, but if you can see it virtually, I just would love to have my art out to the world. I'm so glad you can enjoy it. If you'd like to see more of my work, you can visit my online profile through the Pomo Arts. There's a digital gallery there. You can find out where to contact me and see more of my work. This is just my abstract. I do a lot more, but I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Well, we're back with the artists, and I'm going to get them to turn their microphones on. Thank you. That I really enjoyed listening to you talking about your work. Oh, I can see Edsy's having a. Is it not working, Edsy? Okay. I'm going to Bill and Pierre. Do you want to talk for a sec? Oh, he's got it. I was going to just run in and help him. Edzzy is with us this evening in one of the galleries. So he has some of his artwork and Bill's artwork behind him. And both Bill and Pierre are streaming with us from their homes. So I don't see any questions. I have a lot of really nice comments in the Facebook comments, so you might want to go and have a look afterwards. But we don't have any actual questions that I can see yet, but it would be great if we can just sort of chat a little bit. We heard a bit about how Bill came into the group, but we really didn't hear about how Pierre and Edzzy first started working together. Do you want to speak to that?
I'll let Pierre go for that one.
Okay.
Do I remember? Yeah. Well, I mean, we both worked and belonged to a gallery, Gallery Gachet in downtown East Side. And that's where we first met. Because we both were involved in the shows there, and Edzzy was also very involved in installing, and I was involved in also some of the shows. We met there, and I personally was extremely impressed by Edzy's work. I mean, he had a solo show at the time, at some point, and I thought, whoa, this is remarkable work. And so that was the first time I connected with Edzzy. And then we just chatted, and I did over the time and discovered that we have this interest in this scientific and art area in this area, and that gravitation and gravitation waves came up, and Edzzy had some techniques that he was using at the time that were intriguing to me. And that he offered to show me, and I had also some ideas and a potter's wheel that had been also given to me that I could use as the machine to create the spin and so on a larger scale. And so that way we kind of, I had some of the equipment, and he had some of the skills as well and ideas, and so we put those two together and started to work together and collaborate. Ideas come off each other. We teach each other and so on. And at a later date, of course, Bill came into the equation also because he has this wealth of other knowledge that we can influence each other. And hopefully one day when this thing is over, we can kind of get together and really groove.
Yes, that's the hard part, not being able to have the three of you here together to do the opening. It's pretty incredible timing that this show that's so closely tied with science and astronomy is on the same time as the Mars landing.
Right.
Do you think they'll find any information out that you'll be able to incorporate into your work? Edzzy, do you want to talk to that one?
Well, I'm hoping so. I guess they're trying to really find life there, or evidence that there was life there. So that might be really thrilling if they could do that. Yeah, there's going to be immense amounts of information that comes from it, and I'm sure that all of us are kind of interested in it. So we're going to keep an eyeball on it for sure.
Yeah.
Blue sunsets on the red planet. The pictures are already inspiring.
That's right.
So that'll work for your work as well, Bill.
Oh yeah, it's already inspiring me. It's working.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Bill, you were saying that you are doing children's books using, when we were talking about it here in the gallery, you were using your existing artwork and creating new collage pieces digitally.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that a bit for people to?
Well, my artistic process has always come from a pursuit of infinite detail. And I used to do that with a pen or with a pencil, and it used to take me 40 hours for a drawing. I started discovering different materials and different techniques that would generate this insane amount of detail but it wouldn't come from a state of actually planning it like I would a figurative drawing. I could make textures and I could be inspired by those pieces that appear as I work on this. And afterwards I can repurpose those. So I could make something that was a cloud, and later on I could scan it and I can make it into a sky that was inside of a collage. And so by assembling different elements together, I release control of having to make a thing that is already planned, and I can just generate something that really inspires me, and then I can repurpose it as I move forward. So it's a very freeing process where I'm no longer trapped by what should be. It can be what pops up from what I make.
That's kind of great. So now I think we should ask Pierre a bit about your the spinning on the potter's wheel. I didn't know you did it with a potter's wheel. I think we just got rid of a really old
Whoa, maybe.
if I'll have to check and get back to you if there is something available. I have some video footage that I will be incorporating into the digital gallery of you using the potter's wheel in the creation of your work. But do you want to talk a little bit about that, the process?
Right. Well, we need something, need to spin a door, so to speak. You need something that has enough power to do it. And so the art of doing that really is, again, an experimentation as a theme that runs with all of our work. It is, you have to attach this thing to the potter's wheel, and then you have to learn about the speed at which you can put paint on and let it flow off. So by trial and error, and then as you move along, you start getting more complex. So now you start having two centers on the same thing, which means you have to kind of attach weights, balance it, dealing with gravity again, balance it in a way that it doesn't go flying off the wheel when you're spinning, and creates two separate centers. So it's fun. I don't think it's dangerous, but we always, when we're doing this, if Etsy is here, we're always kind of cautious that we take our distance from the machine when it spins, in case we get some weights of doors flying at us.
Science.
Actually, Pierre, I have to say the question that I've been asked this week quite often, people are asking about getting a door and using it in their home. Are the doors that are hanging on the wall, would you say that they are usable doors?
Well, absolutely, that's what they are. I mean, they're doors I took off their hinges, and the hinges are there as well. So I've kept the handle and I've kept the door, the thing, and so they could be, of course, they have different sizes, although they come from standard kind of homes. Okay,
that's great. Etsy, you had talked about the piece behind you, but I know that you have some smaller pieces on the wall that were on the wall when you were doing the small spins, the spinners. Oh, yeah. You have some 16 by 16 routed pieces.
I do. I use a lot of the same techniques in the small pieces that I do in the large, much like Bill does. It's kind of an experimental thing, and we kind of experiment to see what those smaller amounts of materials can possibly do, and then we go on to a bigger piece to go ahead and see if we can go and reproduce those kinds of effects. So there's several smaller pieces here. On average, they're about 16 by 16. I've got several pieces here, 8 by 8 inches as well. And most of them are for sale. There's a couple out of my personal collection that I kind of, grew attached to. So it's very hard to let go sometimes.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know that I find that a lot of times we have artists that have difficulty letting go of some of their work. So that's totally understandable. So you'll find that there are pieces that are for sale and pieces that are not for sale in the show. Pierre, going back to the doors, they're hanging on the wall, the ones that are hanging. There's some that are on the stands, but the ones that are on the wall have D-rings on them. So the back of the door is unfinished, or can it be refinished?
Well, of course it could be, but those were created with the intent of being like paintings, instead of to be actually hung. You know, I mean, they're larger paintings, and they could be refinished. Now, I have other doors, as we've seen, that are painted on both sides and could be. And now, of course, I have the folding doors as well that are can just be set in the room as a divider, and they are again can be seen on both sides. Exactly.
There's one right behind me.
Right.
I thought it would be interesting to have some of the artwork, so I brought one of the folding doors in, one of Pierre's folding doors, and one of Bill's paintings is also behind me. And yeah, I noticed one of the artists that has exhibited here before, Jeff Wilson, he commented on it, and I usually have one of his paintings hanging up behind me. And unfortunately, Jeff, I've taken your painting down for the evening. Somebody's just posted that they're going to have 4 doors available soon. Do you collect the used doors, or have you got a good supply?
That's very kind. I mean, I do have a supply, I must say, but I'm always looking for new ones. And the one thing I must say is that, of course, newer doors tend to have these insets and make it more difficult to work with. So I'm actually in the market. If I'm in the market, it's for lighter, older doors with
the completely flat doors. Okay. The other thing, Pierre, I was curious about, I noticed that on the bright yellow door and on the bright green door, you've used a clear red resin. And what can you tell me a bit about the flecks that are in it?
Right. So as we all have said, we kind of move, one thing leads to another, and we affect each other. And of course, my colleagues use colors, different colors. And so at some point I said, well, maybe I should start using different colors as well. So there are resins, and they're mostly clear most of the time. So they give you the opportunity to put things in there. And my thinking was, again, that as things either get drawn into a black hole or come out, they're not going to come out in one piece. They're going to come out in a rough shape. They're going to be broken up and being spat out or sucked in. So I embedded, I poured into this resin what is really paint flecks, so paint pieces of like a black paint. And so you see all these, as if there was a black surface or black object that had been kind of shattered and was coming out.
Okay. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to comment on about their work or about the exhibition in general, working together, that sort of thing?
Well, I could add something, that all of our styles are able to be commissioned, so that if people want doors painted, we could always spin their doors, or we can spin anything that they've got in their house in the same kind of an effect, if you'd, have an idea. So sure, and we can match it up mostly to whatever we've already done.
Okay. Bill, did you want to talk about anything more about the work or the collaboration?
I would like to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to show the work like this. Like when I got to come in and to do the video recording, I got to walk through the space to actually see it for the first time set up like that. It really struck me so hard. I was completely honored to have my work available, and I could see I'm sitting in with Pierre and Etsy, and the scope of what they do and the creativity. I really felt like I was a mad scientist getting to find fellow lab partners. It's such a great feeling. So thank you so much for this. It's a challenging time, and this has been an amazing opportunity. So thank you, everybody.
Well, I certainly appreciate all of your help on the install, because we aren't using our volunteers as much anymore. So especially with these pieces, some of them were a little more challenging, and I definitely appreciate everyone's help in getting the artwork in. So I think then we've talked about everything. Someone had asked if the video would be available after, and it will be available to watch on Facebook, and we'll also upload it to our YouTube channel. Pomo Arts has a YouTube channel, so people will be able to watch it there again. And the artists can also share it to their own Facebook page if they have artist pages. They should have no problem sharing it. Anyway, for tonight, I think we've said everything, and we will thank our guests for joining us. I hope you'll all be able to come and have a look at the artwork in person. And once again, if you're not able to, please have a look at the digital gallery. It's on our website. The link is in the comments on the Facebook comments for this video. And it'll give you, when you scroll through it, you have to click on it, and then you scroll through it once it's uploaded, and you'll be able to get a really good idea of the work. And there's some small videos and close-ups, different images. So thank you again for coming. Enjoy the digital gallery, enjoy it in person, and we'll see you at our next opening reception. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much there, Janice, and Rachel and Caitlin for all the work you've done as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Good night, everyone. Guys, you can stay on a sec. I'm going to say good night to all the guests. Good night.